A deafening explosion tore through the Ardennes forest on December 16th, 1944, hurling me into the snow as I realized the Americans we faced would be the end of us. I was a corporal in the 5th Panzer Army, a 22-year-old veteran of the Eastern Front, now thrown into this desperate offensive known as the Battle of the Bulge. My Mauser rifle flew from my hands, landing in the snow a few feet away, its barrel glistening with frost, while the icy air burned my lungs with every ragged breath. My field gray uniform was soaked through, the damp wool clinging to my skin, and my boots were heavy with mud and snow, the cold seeping into my bones. The forest around me was a frozen hell, the dense pines cloaked in white, their branches groaning under the weight of the snow. But the chaos of battle shattered any illusion of peace. I scrambled to my feet, my hands trembling as I retrieved my rifle, the metal so cold it stung my fingers even through my gloves. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic rhythm that matched the distant thump of artillery, and I could taste the metallic tang of fear on my tongue, mixed with the sharp scent of pine and gunpowder. I had been on the move since before dawn, part of a last-ditch effort to break through the American lines, capture Antwerp, and split the Allied forces in two. We had been told the Americans were weak, their troops inexperienced and overstretched, but as I wiped the snow from my face and peered through the trees, I felt a gnawing doubt that this offensive, our Führer's final gamble, would succeed. The night before, I had sat in a drafty barn, the air thick with the smell of damp hay and cigarette smoke, as our officers briefed us with a feverish intensity. Their voices had been low but urgent, their maps spread out on a rickety table, showing the Ardennes sector where we would strike. I had listened, my body aching from months of relentless fighting, my stomach hollow from lack of food, our supplies dwindling as the Allies tightened their grip. The plan sounded bold, panzers leading the charge, infantry following in their wake, a lightning strike to catch the Americans off guard. But I couldn't shake the memory of the Eastern Front, where I had seen entire divisions crumble under the Soviet onslaught. Now, as the offensive began, I moved forward with my platoon, our boots crunching through the snow, the cold so intense it felt like needles piercing my face. My breath came in sharp gasps, each inhale burning my lungs, and my hands trembled as I gripped my rifle, my fingers numb despite the gloves. The forest erupted into chaos, the sharp crack of small arms fire mixing with the deep thud of tank guns, the air filling with the acrid stench of cordite and the sharp tang of pine sap from shattered trees. Our artillery had opened up at dawn, shells screaming overhead to pound the American positions, and I could feel the ground tremble beneath me, the vibrations rattling my teeth. We advanced quickly at first, our panzers leading the way, their tracks churning the snow into a muddy slush as they rolled through the forest. I saw the lead tank, a Panther, its cannon belching fire as it blasted a path through the trees, the explosion of its shell sending a plume of smoke rising into the sky. We followed in its wake, my platoon fanning out across the forest, our rifles at the ready, our eyes scanning for the enemy. I felt a flicker of hope, a brief surge of adrenaline that warmed me despite the cold, as we pushed deeper into the American sector, the sounds of battle growing louder with every step. The first sign of resistance came as we reached a clearing, the snow-covered ground sloping down toward a frozen stream. I saw the Americans ahead, their tan uniforms stark against the white landscape, their helmets glinting as they moved into position behind a line of foxholes. I dropped to one knee, my rifle snapping up to my shoulder, and fired, the recoil jarring my frame, the crack of the shot echoing through the trees. I saw one of them fall, his body slumping into the snow, but the others returned fire immediately, their M1 Garands barking with a steady rhythm that sent bullets whizzing past my head. I dove for cover behind a fallen log, the bark splintering as rounds struck it, the sharp scent of resin filling my nose. I could hear the roar of a Panzer firing nearby, its shell screaming overhead to explode among the American positions, the blast sending a shower of snow and dirt into the air, the concussion rattling my teeth. I saw the Americans scatter, some diving into their foxholes, others running for the trees, and I fired again, my hands shaking as I worked the bolt, my breath fogging in front of me as I tried to steady my aim. We pressed the attack, our panzers rolling forward, their machine guns chattering as they raked the American lines. I saw one of the tanks take a hit, a bazooka rocket slamming into its side, the explosion sending a fireball into the sky, the heat of it washing over me even from a distance. The tank ground to a halt, smoke pouring from its turret, and the screams of its crew as they burned cut through the chaos like a knife. I felt a pang of fear, my stomach twisting as I realized the Americans weren't breaking. They were fighting back with a ferocity I hadn't expected. I moved forward with my platoon, my boots slipping on the icy ground, my heart pounding as we closed the distance to the stream. The Americans had regrouped, their foxholes bristling with rifles and machine guns, their fire relentless as we approached. I saw men fall around me, their bodies crumpling into the snow, blood staining the white ground in vivid red patches. I dropped into a shallow ditch, my breath coming in ragged gasps, my hands trembling as I reloaded my rifle, the cold metal biting into my fingers. The battle stretched on for hours, the forest a maelstrom of fire and smoke, the snow trampled into a muddy mess beneath our boots. I saw more panzers fall, their hulks littering the clearing, their crews either dead or fleeing into the trees. The Americans brought up their own tanks, Shermans emerging from the fog like ghosts, their cannons booming as they engaged our forces. I watched in horror as one of our last panzers was hit, its turret blown clean off, the wreckage burning fiercely in the snow. I fired until my ammunition ran low, my shoulder aching from the recoil, my ears ringing from the constant noise. I could see the tide turning, the Americans gaining ground, their numbers seemingly endless as they pushed us back. I saw my platoon leader fall, a bullet taking him in the chest, his body slumping into the ditch beside me, his eyes staring blankly at the sky. I felt a wave of despair, my hands shaking as I scavenged his ammunition, my mind racing with the realization that we were losing. The Americans launched a counterattack as the day wore on, their infantry supported by artillery that began to pound our positions, the shells exploding with a force that shook the ground. I saw trees splinter and fall, their trunks shattered by the blasts, the air filling with the scent of burning wood and earth. I ran, my legs burning with the effort, my breath coming in short, desperate gasps as I tried to escape the barrage. I stumbled through the snow, my boots catching on roots and rocks, my body aching with exhaustion. I found cover behind a boulder, my chest heaving as I tried to catch my breath, my hands trembling as I clutched my rifle. I could see the Americans advancing through the trees, their movements methodical, their rifles spitting fire as they cleared the forest. I saw more of my comrades surrender, their hands raised as they emerged from their hiding places, their faces pale with defeat. I wanted to fight on, to honor the oath I had taken. But I could see the futility of it, the overwhelming power of the enemy we faced. I was captured shortly after, my rifle empty, my body too exhausted to run any further. The Americans bound my hands with wire, their faces hard as they marched me back through the forest, past the wreckage of our offensive. I saw the bodies of my comrades, their gray uniforms stained with blood, their faces frozen in expressions of pain and fear. I saw the burned-out hulks of our panzers, their tracks frozen in the snow, a testament to the failure of our attack. They took me to a holding area, a clearing filled with other prisoners, our heads bowed as we sat in the snow, the cold seeping into my bones. The Americans moved with efficiency, their medics tending to their wounded, their officers organizing the next phase of their defense. I saw their supply lines, trucks loaded with ammunition and food, rolling forward without pause, their logistics a stark contrast to our own dwindling resources. I saw their determination, their unity, and I realized that we had never stood a chance. As night fell, the sky darkening to a deep blue, I sat in the holding area, my hands still bound, my body shivering in the cold. I thought about the offensive, about the hope we had carried into the Ardennes, and I felt it crumble into ash. The Americans had held their ground, had fought with a tenacity that we couldn't match, and I knew that we would never recover from this defeat. December 16th, 1944, was the day I saw the end of our dreams, the day I understood that the Reich was doomed, and I felt the weight of that truth settle over me like a shroud.